So we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for coming. I'm Susan Lindsay, Ask Childhood Cancer Foundation's Program Director. Welcome to our first session of Ask's new webinar series, Ask Us About. This virtual discussion series is designed to present topics that are important to families going through diagnosis, treatment, and survivorship. Our topic this evening is returning to normalcy. Wherever you are on this journey, we know there has been significant disruption to the life of your entire family. And we hope you come away this evening feeling that you have more tools in your toolbox to help your family find normalcy and routine. A few pieces of housekeeping before we get started. So we're giving Zoom webinar a try. It doesn't necessarily have all the features that we would want, but we're going to give it a try. If we feel like we don't like this format, we can switch in future months to Zoom meetings where everybody can turn on their video and see each other. We'll pause for discussion and comments throughout. If you have a question while someone is speaking, you can raise your hand. So on the bottom of your screen, you'll see different icons, like a little strip along the bottom. So if you raise your hand, it'll look like that. I just raised my hand so that we'll know, like, oh, somebody, wants to say something when there's a pause in the conversation. You can also, I lower my hand, there we go. There's a Q&A at the bottom, so you can also ask questions in the little Q&A, and I will be managing that. And also you can comment in the chat. So different ways that you can communicate even though your video is not on. We will do our best to get to all of our questions within the hour. We will stop right at 8 and be respectful of everybody's time. We are really excited to have participants register from across the state. And so actually, I'm going to give this a try. One of the features that is kind of cool about Zoom webinar is you can do polls. So I'm going to put up this poll that's going to ask your location. So if you can let us know what area of Virginia you're joining us from tonight, so we can kind of see where everybody is. While you guys do that, it's my pleasure to introduce our panel this evening. Alma Morgan is Assistant Director of Education. She has supported childhood cancer patients, survivors, and siblings' educational needs for over 30 years. In addition to her role at ASK, she continues to work part-time for Children's Hospital of Richmond at VCU and the Survivorship Clinic. Grant Pavlik is an ASK Education Support Navigator. He works with families at Children's Hospital of the King's Daughters in Norfolk, Virginia. He helps patients and survivors stay on grade level with their peers, receive the accommodations they need to be successful, and he supports older teens with opportunities to help them thrive as they reach adulthood. Pam Hill is an Ask mom whose daughter was diagnosed with cancer in 1999 at the age of 12. She is now 24 years old. And Holly Lansbury is an Ask mom whose son was diagnosed with cancer in 2007 at the age of 6 months, and he is now 16 years old. So thank you very much to all of our panelists, and especially our Ask parents for joining us this evening. I'm going to end our poll if everybody has had a chance. And you guys, I think you'll be able to see the results. All right, can you guys see that? All right, so we've got folks from Richmond, Fredericksburg, and Southwest Virginia. Awesome. All right, so I do have one more poll I'm going to put up real quick. Oh, wait, I need to, maybe I am. So this one is, where is your child in the treatment journey? So active treatment, survivorship, and then if it's more chronic, like a blood disorder that doesn't really necessarily fall into active treatment and survivorship, that's an option too. All right, so while you guys are answering that, to give a quick overview of the agenda this evening. So if you're wondering if we're going to get to your question or not, or what you really have on your mind, We're going to talk about what is normalcy and why it's important, normalcy during treatment, both at home and at school, and then after treatment and finding a new normal. So Grant, I'm gonna ask you to kick us off. I know that this topic is near and dear to your heart, and it was actually your idea, so this should be our first topic for our new webinar series. So can you share why it's important to you from your perspective and experience, both as a classroom teacher and as an education support navigator?
Yes, absolutely. So when I was a special education teacher, I came across a few students in my years that had different types of medical diagnosis, anywhere from sickle cell to a student with a brain tumor and active treatment. And at that time, as a teacher and not having this background now as a navigator, and just learning about all these different treatments and diagnosis, as a teacher, I didn't really know how to act. There's, I think, a balance that I needed to find between reaching out to the family or not reaching out to the family, changing the way I taught or provided them with activities and homework. And it was just one of those things where I really didn't know how to act. And when I began training with this job, it was a lot of the understanding was that we try to leave that up to families, but also treat the kids as we would typically before. And that's kind of where that normalcy piece comes in. Obviously, there's times where you just can't do that, depending on what type of diagnosis, what area of treatment they're going through. But it's important that kids aren't big fans of change, and I'm sure we all know that. So obviously it's important to try to minimize changing things that we don't need to change, and just finding that balance, which can be hard, especially when kids are in and out of school, between communicating with parents and the kid themselves, and not communicating. I think that's just an important thing that we kind of discussed. And then that really kind of just developed to normalcy outside the school, at home, in their social life. So I thought that was an important topic to kind of get us started.
What are some tips, Grant, for finding normalcy during treatment? And as I asked that, I do want to say, we know like during treatment is really about survival, right? Just surviving, keeping your head above water. So really just a sense of normalcy, I think, and routine, even if there's little things that that people can think about maybe trying to incorporate into their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said a couple things that really stand out with routine. And obviously when you're going through that treatment, your active treatment, like you said, Susan, survival's the biggest thing, and that's what's going to be on your mind as a parent, especially. So you might not be worrying about these other type of things, but like I said before, kids aren't fans of change, and I mean, even as adults, I don't think we are. So when we think about normalcy, and that's kind of a tough word to think about, because bleeding disorders, cancer, those aren't normal things, especially pediatric cancer and these bleeding disorders that kids have. It's not normal. So everyone's normal is going to look different, and there's not going to be that one size fits all, which is important. So it's going to be kind of what is comfortable for the families and the kids that are going through this. So a big thing I really think is just having that open communication. Things are going to change, but we don't need to change everything. So we're going to try to control what we can control. When you're going through treatment, there's going to be things that are just out, you can't control it. The kids might not be going to school. They might be in the hospital for long periods of time. They might not be able to go see friends due to being, immunocompromised. I can't say that word. So there's going to be a lot of changes. So we want to try to figure out ways that we can minimize those changes. And really the big one, I even when talking to the doctors I work with and the social workers, is they say just having that open communication with your children. And obviously that is going to be different depending on age. But really just talking to them, asking them what their fears are, what their concerns are. A lot of times the younger kids, they might think they're in trouble, and that's why they did something wrong, and that's why they're going through treatment or they're at the hospital. So it's really just communicating with them and understanding, what their thoughts are, what their wants and needs are, and trying to work with that. So, there's a lot of kids, especially when you get to teenager years, that are more worried about how they're going to look. They're worried about missing out time with friends, or even family members. And it's important to still try to find ways to stay connected. And thankfully, with the time we're in now, we have so much technology, it makes it a lot easier. So even if you're not at school, communicate with teachers via Zoom or email. A lot of schools use programs such as Canvas or Schoology, and you can communicate live through that. So just having that open communication with your kids, with your family members, and with their friends is important. And I think as parents, sometimes we might get a little nervous and we don't want our kids to go out and do those social things or do those activities that they were doing before. But I when I meet with parents and I can tell they're kind of concerned about that type of stuff, I always tell them, if the doctor doesn't think your son or daughter is going to be able to do these things, or it's not medically appropriate, they're going to let you know. So I was talking to Susan and Elma about this. I have kids that are in active treatment. And I mean, one of the girls I can think of is in college right now. She still goes surfing. She has a G-tube and a colostomy bag. She goes surfing. She went on a ski trip. And she, of course, always checks in with our doctors. And sometimes they're a little hesitant, but she's still out there doing these things. And I have other kids that, they might not be able to be on that sports team that due to whatever they're going through. But even if they're a part of the team as a manager or going to games or going to practices, just having them be involved. Another thing that one of the social workers I work with often mentioned is that other families and parents might not know if they're able to have those play dates or anything. So you as a parent may have to reach out to them, schedule those play dates, let them know it is okay. We are going through this rough time, but it's still okay for, Johnny to hang out with Tim, things of that nature. So there's definitely a lot of things, but really trying to maintain as much of a routine as possible. Don't change your typical dinner time if you don't have to. Don't change those bedtime routines. Maintain those same behavior expectations at home, and just kind of keeping that same daily routine, that same thing that your child has been used to for however long, will kind of help minimize any of that excess anxiety with change or any fear associated with that.
Pam and Holly, what were the greatest challenges in finding a normal routine during treatment for your child, yourself, your family? Do you remember? I know it's been a while for both of you.
So I'll start off, Holly, if that's okay with you. Hello, everyone. I'm Pam. And my daughter was actually diagnosed in 2012, not 1999.
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay, no, she was born in 1999. If anybody did the math, they probably tried to up and they didn't add up too well. But I see in the poll, 100% of everyone on the call is in active treatment. And Godspeed to all of you. Hang in there, use your resources. And it is challenging. I will tell you, Nora having an older brother who had just started high school, it was a challenge to keep his life normal. And for any of you currently right now that have more than your child going through treatment, you know what I'm talking about, because you can go, both parents or one parent can go to the hospital and have the treatment with the child, but somebody has to be at home. And that's hard too, because both parents a lot of times want to be with the child. There's a lot to learn, a lot to figure out and hear, but you got to have normal at home. So having your children at home, not be scared and worried about their sibling, and being able to continue to do their sports, And by the way, lean on your resources. If somebody says, what do you need? Let me know what you need. Tell them. Say, I need you to pick up my son from soccer because I'm going to be at treatment, and treatment goes a long time. And let them do the things they can do to help you. That was our biggest challenge, was trying to let him have his own life and continue his normal while we weren't normal.
Thank you. Holly?
Um, our situation was a little different. At the time that my son was in treatment, I had his grandfather, my dad, also got diagnosed with cancer after he did. So we were dealing with two people that had cancer. Unfortunately, my dad didn't make it, but it gave us the strength to, like I said, also for our son, keep normalcy, because my son does have a sibling too. Like she said, when you have siblings, you do have to worry about how am I gonna, who's gonna be able to take care of him. What we did was we actually had relatives that were able to, when their other set of grandparents was able to help us, and the support of family and friends and people who knew us. And as we met people while we were in treatment, unfortunately some of them didn't make it. Some of their kids didn't make it, but it did help you keep the normalcy for your child, because there are other people going through what you were going through in similar situations. And just trying to keep a normalcy of, like he said, routine. And then we didn't actually deal with school, but the effects of after he was through treatment, dealing with the schools and everything, because of he had to go through the whole school system, and we're actually still going through that right now. And some of the effects that of the treatment, especially the learning, is have been affected, and Ask has been very helpful with those, helping us with that part of it. And then, just like I said, if someone asks you, like you said, what do you need, or is there anything I can do, or just having someone to talk to, is good, because it's a good, like I said, um, it's a good way to keep normal and stay normal, because like I said, your schedule daily changes based on how much treatment you have to go through, or and ours was in, like I said, it was in 2007. And we're about 16 years into this, and we're actually, like I said, each year is a different thing, because when you deal with, like I said, right now I have my son's in high school, and each year throughout that's a different thing. And I know that's another webinar they're going to talk about, and I'm actually supposed to be on the one about IPs. We had to go through that whole process. But just trying to keep a normalcy, and just, like I said, if, friends and family, if they want to help, and, let them help, because you can't do it all. And then, like I said, me and my husband, we actually were, when my son was doing treatment, we actually alternated, so that one parent can be with, both kids get time with both parents, and we can be there, for both of them.
Yes, I would agree with Holly 100%. Lean on your resources, lean on Ask. If Alma looks you straight in the face, as she did to me, Nora, at the end of her 5th grade year, because Nora was diagnosed at the end of her year, and she then did homebound for that summer. But come August, Alma looked straight at me, didn't you, Alma? And she said, Mama, let her go back to school. She's going to be just fine. She's as healthy as she can be right now. And she was taking, the prednisone and everything, but I didn't want to let her go. And I know Holly was the same way. It's like, you can't let them go. But when the doctors and Alma tell you to do that, do it. It is the best thing for the child, without question.
And we still meet, like I said, we still meet There was a kid that we know that we still meet kids that my son was in a class with a kid that he knew from the ASK program, and he was a student, and they said hello and stuff, but I'm not sure if they each remember that they were it, and he didn't want to, because of HIPAA, he didn't want to say, oh, he knew him because he had cancer. Because kids sometimes can be, react differently. And, some kids could get bullied just because of, they have cancer. And you don't want that to ever happen to anyone, but and a lot of some of my kids' friends, they don't know that my son had cancer. He's a survivor. We're to keep him normal, we let him choose who he wants to tell at this when they get to like school age, because of there's kids that a lot of kids don't experience this. I mean, it's a group that you become a part of that you meet people we met people through Ask and everything, and and when they were younger and stuff, and now they're getting older and stuff, and like I said, you may run to some in school and stuff, and you know
Holly, I like what you said about how you have him kind of decide. That was actually something I was going to talk about a little later, but I think it's a great time. As I feel as a teacher that it is very important that you obviously share with teachers, but you don't have to share that with everyone, and you don't have to share it with the kids in the class if you don't want to, especially when you get to those older ages. Like I know a lot of the other navigators have gone out to classrooms and shared with the elementary age kids, but a lot of high school kids, they don't want other kids to know. So I think it is important they have that, you're kind of empowering them and letting them decide. However, I do feel that it is important, that you at least let counselor or admin know of kind of the history. And a lot of times, if you have that IEP or the 504 plan, they're already going to know that. But even if they don't, because, it's just good to kind of, keep that out there and let them know there might be some different things that they might be facing, some fears, anxieties, later after treatment. So I do really like that what you said there. And Pam, the same thing that you said about, leaning on people. That was something I had highlighted real big, and I skipped right over it here on my notes. Definitely lean on and seek support, especially during treatment. It is okay to ask for help. You have big medical teams, you have social workers, you have navigators at every center. We want to be there to help you and make things easier. So definitely lean on the help that is being offered to you, and don't be afraid to kind of speak up and let people know what you need.
I read a suggestion recently that said keep a running list of things that you need help with, because when people ask and then your mind goes blank and you're like, I know there are things, but I don't know what to say right in the moment, so that you can say, can you come by on Thursday and bring the trash down to the street for the garbage truck, like just little things that can help your family kind of just keep things going. Hang on, Lenny, I see you in the chat. So because we're on webinar instead of Zoom meetings, the participant videos aren't on, so it's not just you. But let me make sure. Now we can like see your square and you can talk. So thanks for being here. I want to open it up to the parents who are here. If you have challenges with routine, that things that we haven't covered that you want to, like a challenge you'd like to bring to the group to get suggestions on, or any comments about that challenge, particularly in active treatment. No. All right. So we titled this webinar Returning to Normalcy. But Pam and Holly, I wanted to ask you if you feel like you returned to normal or you created a new normal after treatment, and if there's a difference for you, and if this is an important distinction.
I would say new normal, because the old normal doesn't exist anymore. And cancer has changed that, and treatment has changed that and everything. Because even after my son had treatment and surgery, we still had other issues that we had to overcome that took we had one issue that led us to find the cancer that took several years to overcome. And with, by seeing doctors and all that kind of thing, there were other challenges that were in our way. And it kind of felt like for several years that there was always a hurdle you had to jump over. And a lot of parents do kind of feel that way. And then once you jump over that hurdle, there's always another one waiting for you. And we had that feeling that happened for several years. And then it got to a point after he was done treatment and after we overcome some of the issues we had that led us to find the cancer. It took us a couple years to, like I said, you felt like you were still going over hurdles. And then it came to a point where there were no other hurdles there because you were always expecting another hurdle to have to jump over.
I would agree 100% with what Holly said, because you don't know what you don't know. Cancer is a journey. And once a cancer patient, unfortunately, always a cancer patient. And when I actually had this saying, we were talking about the support and all the people, the great people you will meet. I used to say, it's like being invited to this really wonderful, group of people. They're doing all the same thing, but wishing like hell you could have RSVP'd. No, nobody to go on this journey. And for Nora, her condition was a brain tumor, and she's going to be a lifelong endocrine patient. So she sees endocrinology. No matter where she goes or wherever we move to, she has to be followed by endocrinologist. And, as a mom, as a dad, you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? It's like, yeah, they're out of treatment now, but will it come back? That is so normal to feel that way. I can tell you 12 years later, every time we get blood labs back for anything, I look at it like with a fine tooth comb, and there is no old normal. That normal for your family is pretty much gone. But the new normal is pretty doggone good, because you are going to have lots of reasons to celebrate, and lots of people that will remember what you went through, and you'll be able to remember that too. And your child will change a little bit, and they change in different ways. And I would certainly recommend you lean on Grant and Susan and Alma, because we didn't understand all of the other things that were post, what the chemo can do for, somebody's, a foot drop and different things like that happen. You have to wait for the next hurdle, and you just do it. But the normal that we have now is, just being grateful. Just like Holly said, we went through treatment, and some people didn't make it. And because my daughter was still there the next day and the next day, that's what kept me going. And I'm hoping that's what will keep you going with your children. It's extremely important for the child.
That's beautifully said, Pam. And
Holly,
Holly.
and I would love to say to Holly and Pam, and the one reason I'm so happy that they're both on this panel today is, I've followed your children and your family, so to speak, over the years, and the one with both of you, you have you have walked the normal walk. I mean, as your child approached certain ages, you said, okay, at this age, they should be doing this, and they did it. And at this age, they should be doing this. And as you told me, Holly, a while ago, Jared just got his driver's license. Well, he's at that age, he's supposed to have his driver's license. And, and they're going to school, they were going to school, and they were participating in extracurricular activities. And as Nora got older, she went and got some vocational training. So, I mean, both of you, my hat's off to both of you, because I know some parents have a very hard time taking that next step, but you did that just as any of us would do with their children who have not experienced the cancer journey. You did those things in order. And so hats off to you. And that's part of why I think both of your children are so successful today.
Thank you.
We have a couple questions. The first one is, we are struggling with maintaining a normal routine and offloading chores from our sick kid to other siblings. How do you give your sick kid a break while making sure the siblings don't get jealous or resentful? That balancing act between the sick kid and the sibling.
I'll be happy to take that one just from my experience. And that is a very, very good question, because you can sense it and you can see it when there's jealousy, because they don't understand. And the siblings oftentimes they're concerned, they're nervous, they see their parents are acting different. They see the child looks different. They have the moon face, from the steroids, and it's just, they don't know how to act, really. So I would ask you to talk to them. And it took me a while to learn that, because I just thought they should be, Nora's brother should just be able to do what her chores are. But I actually sat down and talked to him, and I told him, I said, listen, we're all scared. We don't know what the outcome is going to be here, but we're a team and we're going to work together. And I really need you to help me out with these things. And it took a while, but I talked to him really like he was an adult. He was 16 at the time. And actually he was probably 14. And it was a challenge, but he did come around. But I continued to talk to him about it.
Samantha, how old are the siblings? How old are your kids?
So our sick kid is 13. The siblings are 11, 9, and 5.
Okay. So a varying range of being able to understand what's happening.
Yeah, so it's mostly the 11. He's almost 12. His younger brother, who's taken on some of the, stuff that Tecumseh would do. And I think he's usually great about it, but sometimes you can see it's like, why do I have to do this? Why do I have, and we've tried to give him a break too, but I think it's a big family, things have to get done. And that was our normal routine, right? So we're trying to maintain as much of that routine as possible. Just redistribute things around a bit. So yeah, I don't know.
Sure. Does anybody else have a similar situation and can share how they've handled it, whether it's working well or not? if you kind of have that same sibling dynamic.
I guess I'll speak. We have actually, our kids actually are twins, and my daughter's a minute older than my son is, and she's kind of, you notice within the siblings that we've noticed more of she being a protector for him because of, she's gone through the process, because when my son was diagnosed, he was diagnosed at 6 months of age, and she was also the same age as him, and they grew up together, and she experienced all the stuff except when he had the surgery. We did not have her with him because we did not want her to remember all that occurred, because of to protect her. But as they've gone through, like they're going through like the same grade together and school together and everything, they and as they're now in teenage years, they are, like I said, they have their combined friends, they have their friends separate, but they also, in Normalcy, we try to not treat him any differently than her, but she knows exactly what occurred, and she's, like I said, she's more protective of it because it's her little brother. But in a way, I think it's a good thing because it makes her, I think she wouldn't experience some of the people we've met and some people he's known, had he not had the cancer. If that makes sense. We would have, we've met people that we would have probably never met.
Sure. Thanks, Holly. Another question. We are struggling that we are all feeling stuck at home in solidarity with our sick kid for several months, but recently decided that the other kids should be able to do stuff. I find that our sick kid feels like he's missing out because he doesn't have the energy to go to the park or museums. How do we navigate making sure our other kids get to do stuff without having our sick kid feel left out? That's another really good question.
That is a really good question. And when
Yeah.
our kids were younger, Nora being 12 and Gabe at 14, it was, that summer it was camp. And she had to see him go off to camp, and she couldn't go to camp. We went to pick him up, and she got to see all of the people, but she didn't get to experience none of those things. It is a super, super hard thing to do, but that is absolutely imperative to normal family life. So let your other kids do these things, because your child in treatment is getting a lot of special things too. They don't quite see it because they feel so crappy. But there's a ton of things that post treatment survivorship that they will get to benefit from, and they will enjoy, and they will feel like doing those things. But let the child do what they can do. And if that's, FaceTiming with their friends or playing video games or whatever it may be, or going to the park and feeding ducks, if that's all the energy they have, let them do those things. If they are at a point after treatment or toward the end of treatment, the ASK program, I think it's called Moving Forward, is a great, great program to help them restore their energy. And they will look forward to that because they'll be working with a trainer. I highly, highly recommend it. It really altered Nora's physical energy and endurance toward the end of treatment. When we could kind of see the finish line, she got involved in that, and it really restored her health, so really, really well. So.
The program that Pam is referencing, Moving Forward, is a partnership that ASK has with the YMCA of Greater Richmond, where once a child is in survivorship, they can get personal training. It's a commitment, and you have to commit up front. The child will go once a week for personal training, and then the Y also provides a family membership for the whole family. So it's a pretty amazing deal. We do just ask like people consistently use it, or so we can make room if they're not using it, other people can use that benefit.
We actually had an issue because my kids were younger when my son was diagnosed, is that he couldn't be around. We had to be careful about how, who he was around, because when a child is undergoing treatment, germs are bad for them, or someone who's sick is not great for them. And it's hard because you got to be careful, because anytime they can get sick, they have to go in the hospital. And we had to be careful about how many, like, about people who they were around, especially kids, or and then we also had to make sure we had flu shots and all that stuff, because this was in 2007, and to about 2000, maybe 11, I don't know. But and we still now, even though my son is 16, we still now, like, when this comes around to cold and flu season, we still get our flu shots just to protect ourselves, because if one person gets sick and they're around your child, they can easily get sick. And they tend, because they're immunocompromised, it takes them longer to get well. Or if they get really, really sick, means they have to go to the hospital. Which could be, it's a lot, because when because of the history of cancer, or because they're undergoing treatment. And we felt that our daughter did miss out on some of that when my son was younger, but as we did do stuff as, like, as a family, or that kind of thing. If, like I said, I would say also, I agree with Pam, you could, let them meet, let them have friends. And like I said, you could either do, like I said, a Zoom call, or, we have a lot of technology compared to how we were before. And, you just got to be careful about, if a child is sick, you hope that the parent will let them know, or the kid will let them know, look, I'm sick, and as a courtesy to your child, because you don't want them to get sick.
I think too that back to what do you do? I say let the siblings go ahead with their activities and their play dates and all. But with the sick child, sometimes you just have to really be creative, and you have to think out of the box. And maybe they can't be around large crowds, but during the weekday when the theater's open, maybe you could take them to the movie and they wouldn't be around a crowd. Sometimes you can be almost in the theater by yourself. Or, maybe they really enjoy a hands-on craft or activity, and you could do that with them. It's kind of just, again, thinking out of the box, being creative, so that they have something to share with their siblings. When the sibling gets home from the play date and they're talking about their day, then they have something to share too, that they experienced that was fun and different for them also.
Other questions? Those were really good questions, Samantha. Thank you. One other thing I wanted to be sure that we touched on is the importance of goal setting. And that sounds really big and grandiose, but I think sometimes we can just be almost like micro goals. And we don't necessarily think of goal setting as something that goes with routine. So Grant, can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I think this is something that you can do both during treatment and then even afterwards in survivorship. Again, like we discussed before, during treatment, your main idea is, the survival, getting through treatment, getting healthy again. But there's going to be a lot of things that you're missing. A lot of things, I'm sorry, if you hear the dog. A lot of things that the kids are going to be missing out on. A lot of things they're going to be wanting to do. So I think it's important just to kind of, set those goals. I'm sorry that you missed this baseball season, but maybe next year we can try out for the team once we're healthy, or in 2 years, or, missing out on school dances or anything like that. Well, there'll be a prom next year we can go to when we're feeling a little better. Even just celebrating the end of different parts of your treatment stages, setting those goals to get through that one stage of treatment. Typically, depending on, the chemotherapy or whatever it might be you're getting, you might have a little break, just celebrating that, and setting goals to how you're gonna go through the next round, what you're gonna do during that. And then afterwards, I think both Pam and Holly kind of mentioned that there's going to be some of those fears and anxieties. So, I mean, it could be anything from setting the goal to, I'm going to go to school 3 days a week for half a day, and then I'm going to work my way up. I'm going to start doing 3 full days, and then I'm going to work to 4 days. So doing things like that, setting larger goals, after treatment and after I get through high school, I'm going to get a scholarship, go to college, I'm going to go to trade school. So it's, again, communicating with your child and trying to figure out, what they want to do. They missed out on a lot of things during their time, sometimes up to 3 years in treatment. So they're going to miss out on a lot of things, and they're probably going to want to do a lot of things, so it's going to just be, being able to kind of sit down with them and acknowledging that, and also acknowledging any anxiety or fear they might have about going back to school or going out in public, being around a lot of people, or even, that fear of that cancer or bleeding disorder, whatever it may be, coming back later in life. So it is important to talk about those things and understand those fears, but it's also important to set goals, something for them to work towards. I don't know if I answered your question, Susan. I think I got part of it in there.
Yeah.
Grant, you did, and I'd like to add something to that to the parents. I know we're talking about setting goals, and I always use the term bucket list. And if I ever, when I do in-person conferences and presentations, I always like to look at the audience, which is usually full of parents. And parents too, you need a bucket list. You are walking this journey too, and it is so hard and so heartbreaking. Sometimes I say my heart breaks for the parent, but it's important that you learn to be really good to yourself, and that you have a bucket list, and it can be, have something out there, short term and long term. It might be having a lunch date with a friend. It might be going to the movies by yourself and eating popcorn, and and just enjoying your time alone. But plan things for yourself too, because it's just so important that you take care of yourself, because it's hard for everyone. And I did see a question here about, when kids go back to school, can they go back part-time? Absolutely, they can go back part-time. They can have a partial day school. So all that can be put in place through the IEP or the 504 plan.
And another great thing when we're talking about school, because I did see that question from Samantha too, that's why I think it's very important to communicate with schools, because a lot of you think of teachers and everything, we got into the position because we like working with kids. So we want to help kids, we want to work with kids, and we're usually pretty flexible and want to help as much as we can. So I have kids right now that are in active treatment, that the schools built the schedule. So they had, their core classes in the afternoon so they could sleep in or go to their appointments and go to class in the afternoon. Or I have some kids that are in high school, and down here in the Hampton Roads area, most schools do block schedules. So they have a couple classes one day, a couple classes on a B day. And again, they might put some of those core classes on, the A day, and then their B day might be kind of the electives. And if they're able to make it that day, great. But if they don't make it, then, it's not a huge loss. They're not missing out on those core things. So that's why I think it's very important, to kind of really talk to your schools, work with your schools, and that's why we're here. So that's why all the navigators are here too, to help you with that, and just kind of work with them. There's ways around obstacles, and we can definitely help you navigate that and figure out ways to make sure kids are getting in school. There was a quote I wanted to share because I pulled it from research, and it said students who stayed in school or connected with school developed better social and communication skills, had more self-confidence, and were less likely to develop academic problems compared to those students who did not stay somewhat connected with school throughout treatment. So even if it is sending those emails, doing a Zoom call once a week, I know it's hard to get to school. Sometimes we're on homebound, but there's still ways to stay connected with teachers and peers. And I think that's very important, that we try to at least do that throughout treatment and beyond.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Grant. That sounds great.
It's, yeah, and you know, school for kids, it's like work for us. It's where we spend the majority of our day. We have a lot of relationships that we develop, and it is normal for them. It's their normalcy is to be at school. So it makes sense, that research makes sense that that's the outcome.
And I'm sure Alma could speak on this, and Amy and John, who are also in here, that I don't know how many kids I've had when they started treatment. They talked about how they didn't like school and they didn't want anyone to know. And then a month or two into it and not being there, the only thing they talk about is wanting to go back to school, wanting to see their kids, because it isn't just that academic thing. They are, like Susan said, they're making friends, they're developing social skills. So it is important. It is like that job for them as they're younger. That's part of their normal daily routine. So a lot of times they may not like it, but after they miss it for a while, they seem to always want to go back.
I'd like to share one other thing too, since I have so many parents on here that are children are in active treatment. In working, you know, over 30 years with this population and working with a lot of young adults now that are in their 30s and 40s, and I knew them when they were in high school. When I go back and I read college essays, and when we have groups and we're talking and all, kind of consistently across the board, most all of them tell me, you know, I'm not saying I'd want to do it again, Alma, but I'm glad I had this experience. It taught me what life is really about. It's been bittersweet, but I've learned so much, and I've met a lot of, you know, really good people along the way, and good friends. And it's taught me so much. I'm glad I had this experience. So I know that's hard to believe. It's like when I first see a parent and I'm working with a parent, and, you know, they're tearful and they're thinking, how am I going to get through this? And then years later, and the child is doing so well, and they're smiling like Pam and Holly, and, you know, and they're saying, we did it. So, you know, as Grant and said earlier, and Pam, and use your resources and use your friends and use your families and hold them close to you, and let them help you. Let them help you. Don't ever be afraid to ask for help.
That is a great wrap up, Alma. Thank you. It's 7:59, so we're gonna stop here. If you have other questions that we didn't get to or you think of later, you can always email one of us or your education support navigator at your treatment center. Samantha, that's John Longenecker for you, who I'm sure you've probably met in the clinic. And he can help you with a partial day for your child. But we're always available to answer questions. I want to thank everybody so much for attending our first webinar. We hope that you leave this evening feeling like you're part of a community of support, and that you have one or two takeaways of things you can try or focus on with your child and with your family. Our next webinar is Thursday, October 19th from 7 to 8 p.m. Ask us about educational plans. Education support navigator Amy Fender will be leading the discussion. We'll discuss the types of supports and accommodations your child can receive to help them be more successful in school. We'll talk about the child study process, as well as the differences between a 504 plan and an individualized education plan, or an IEP. So thank you to everyone. Thank you to Pam and Holly, and Grant and Alma. And we hope to see you next month. Have a great week.